Hi, a few people have asked if I could do a start to finish video on the linen stitch. So I'm going to do that today. The picture that I posted a second ago shows the colors I'm going to use and the pattern of the colors that I'm going to do in the blanket. I'm using pale gray, corn, and ivory, and those are all Bernat blanket big colors. And I want the size to be about 40 by 60. When you do the linen stitch, you have to start with an odd number of cast on, because to make the stitch look best, you need 2 rows of knit stitches on either side. So you'll have 2 on the left, 2 on the right, and in the middle will be your linen stitch pattern. So 4 of your cast on will be taken up by knit stitches. The others will be the linen stitch pattern. So I'm going to start with 25. So that'll mean 4 and 4. So 4 of the stitches are going to be knit all the way up. And then 25 minus that 4. So 21 stitches of the cast on are going to be the body of the blanket. All right. So you start by making a loop like this. Put your finger through the middle. This is your working yarn attached to your skein. You're going to pull it through and make another loop. You want to make these about the same. I keep some pressure on it so that it doesn't move, and it makes my chain links more consistent. And I guess that's why I've never been able to knit sitting or on the floor. Maybe I could do it on the floor. I don't know if my back could handle it, but for me, I am not talented enough to not do it on a hard surface. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25. All right. And when I initially will measure this, this is not going to be what it ends up being. It'll end up being bigger. But when I cast on, initially it looks like it's going to be about 32 inches, but it will be wider than that. Partially because after you do your chain of 35, I'm going to check 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 25. Okay, 25. I'm going to flip it over. On the back side of your chain, you'll see a bunch of bumps. Those are what you're going to work with next. So, your number 25, in order to get a nice non-rounded, so squared off corner, what I do is I go in this 25th and I just chain 1 knit stitch on like this and leave it there. The rest of these bumps that you see, you're going to knit into them. So I'm going to lift up this bump right here. I'm going to pull the yarn through it to make a loop, and then I'm just going to leave it. And I want to get all my loops about the same height. Later on, I'll show you that you're going to have to stagger your stitches, but for the cast on, I found that you can just do them all the same height. So just go through each one of these bumps that you see. If you don't see the bumps, honestly, the best thing to do is tear everything apart and make your chain over. The chain has to look like you want it, or I think you'll be disappointed in the outcome. So perfect making your chain, and that will make the entire blanket much easier, and your finished blanket will look better. So keep going through the bumps, and then Stop when you get to the end, and I'll be back. All right, I've gotten to the end, and I'm almost to where I started. Don't forget this last bump right here that you need to work through. All right. So this is going to be the bottom of your blanket, so you want that nice chain there. Okay. To make the sides of your blanket look like the bottom chain, I like to, what I call, drop the end stitch, go across, drop it, and then I pick it up on my way back. So I'm going to drop this first one right here at the end, and this is how your pattern will go. These two on each end are knit all the way up on both sides. These will alternate. So this one I'm dropping will be a knit. So the second in is a knit. Then the third one, I'm going to take my yarn, cross it over that third loop. I'm not purling it, I'm not knitting it, I'm just crossing over. Then I'm going behind the fourth. So you're like weaving like this. I'm going to go behind the fourth, pull it through, and make a knit stitch. Okay? Now, this fourth is your first knit stitch in your core pattern. Make it almost twice the length of your end knit stitches, because on the way back, you're going to be cutting that in half because you're going to go over it. It'll make sense as we go along. So I did a knit. So this is number 5. I'm going to go over it, go over number 5, go under number 6, and then pull a knit stitch through, make it a little longer than you normally would, go over 7, knit through 8, make it a little longer. Continue until you get to 24 and 25. You're going to knit this and knit this, and I'll be right back. All right, I've been going over, under, over, under. Okay, this is my 24th and 25th. The 23rd, I go over it, then I'm going to go under. I'm going to do just a regular sized knit. So not as long as this one. It's shorter. And then I'm going to knit that final one on the end. Okay, so see how they stagger lengths? All right, on the way back, I will drop this one that I just did. I'm not going to do anything with it. I'm going to knit regular into 24. Then this one that I just went over, that's the one that I'm going to knit this time and make it a little bit longer. Then cross over. So I'm knitting these little stubby ones that I crossed last time and make them a little bit longer. So over, knit it, make it a little longer. Over, knit it, make it a little longer. Continue on. Again, you're making them long and short because when you're skipping over them, you need to allow a little extra length so you don't lose your stitch. All right. So the long ones that I made on the way over, those are the ones I'm skipping over now. So I'm skipping over that one. I'm going to knit. This is my third one in. It'll be a long knit. Then 1 and 2 again, just regular size knit. Okay. All right. Now I'm on my way back. I'm going to drop number 1. Do a regular size knit on number 2. I'm crossing over the 3rd, doing a long knit in the 4th. Crossing over 5. Long knit number 6, and so forth. Keep doing this. I'm going to keep doing this until I'm out of my gray at one end or the other. Sometimes if I want a certain size of color panel, like I would do 8 rows or I do 12. But this one I'm strictly going by, I run out of one color, I'm going to do the other, because I pre-measured all of my balls of yarn and they're all exactly equal, so I don't have to count my rows. So keep doing this until you run out, and I'll see you then, and we'll switch colors. So this came up, so I'm going to show you what to do. Sometimes a skein will have a knot in it. This one's tied pretty well, but I'm not a big fan of knots. You can leave it there or you can sew them together. I like to cut the knot out and burn the skeins back together. The thing you have to make sure is that you trim it so you can see that cord on both sides. Then I take the one attached to my blanket with my lighter, and so it's burning. Take it, push it together. You can use parts of the yarn near the tip to kind of protect your fingers, but I've never found it to be that hot that it hurts. Shape it into a line, and then you continue on, and you've gotten rid of your knot. Okay. Kind of want to show you what I do when I pre-measure my yarn. I don't actually measure it with a tape measure. So this was actually just one skein of corn Bernat blanket, but I wrapped it around my arm and counted how many times I wrapped it, and I found that by wrapping it 22 times, that's half of a skein. So this is 22 wraps, 22 wraps. Whatever you do to measure, just make it in half. So then when I'm using this, I tie a knot. This is going to be what I use for the corn on this end of the blanket, but I'm mirroring it on the opposite end. So when I get to this knot, where is it? Right here. I'm going to stop. Then I'll know that I have enough to mirror this same size block of corn color on the other end. Okay. So I'm going to burn the end on here. I'm going to trim it, get it nice and flat. Get this one nice and flat so I can see it. All right. I'm going to light this. Burn it on. Push it together. And if sometimes it doesn't feel solid, cut it and redo it. I always give it a little tug to make sure it's good. All right, so now I can just continue on with my pattern using corn. Again, I'll know when to stop because I've got my halfway knot. So I'm skipping the first one, and I'm just going to knit regular size, then long knit, skip over, long knit, skip over, and long knit. All right, I will continue doing this until I run out of corn. I think this is my lucky blanket. It literally ended perfectly. So my next section is going to be larger. So it looks like I have corn. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I got 7 out of that. And that's because when you do your cast on row, it eats up a little more yarn. That's why there was only 12 and this is 7 instead of, you would think it'd be 12 and then half would be 6. But this does eat up a little more yarn. So my next section, I'm going to use vintage, but I want to use a skein and a half. So I did the same thing as I did before with the corn. I have 22 wraps here, 22 here. So I'm going to do these halvesies. I'm going to do 1.5 skeins at this end, and then mirror it at the opposite end of my blanket. And I'm going to use my full one and then add the half one on. After you do that, we'll add on the next color. Okay, so I have done 1 skein of pale gray, half a skein of gold, and 1 skein of vintage. And here's what I have realized. This is actually perfect because the length right now is 30 and I want it to be 60. So I'm going to forego my initial plan of colors, and I am just going to mirror what I did right here. So I'll add onto this a skein of vintage, my other half of corn, and then end up at the other end finishing off with pale gray, and it will be perfect. Sometimes when I try a new color block, I have to adjust the amount, and this is perfect. It's 39 wide and I'm halfway through and it's 30 inches long. So I'm going to do that, and then I will check back at the end for casting off. Hello, I am back, and I've been doing the pale gray. I'm almost finished. You need to stop it's 1 more row before you do your cast off to straighten up your stitches. In my particular case, I've done 11 in the gray and I'm getting ready to do 12. So for this one, you're going to do your blanket stitch, linen stitch, but you're not going to make any long knit pieces. So I'm going to go over, but then when I do the knit, I'm just doing a normal size knit, and that will get everything lined up for your final cast off. So I'm going to even these up leading up to the cast off. Make sure you can see. I work on my stove. Everyone makes it fun and calls me stovetop blankets, but it's the most comfortable. I do have to roll up my blanket as I work because it gets in the way. All right, so I'm now at the end, but all my stitches are now the same length. And I'm gonna go into my final cast off, leave plenty of yarn. I usually will leave 4 lengths of my blanket to cast it off. So normally this is the stitch I've been dropping on the end. Knit 1. This will make your corner squared. Grab the one right next to it, put it on your finger, pull the working yarn through. Grab the next loop, put it on your finger, and pull it through. Your cast off is basically a single crochet. You're just grabbing each loop, putting it on your finger, and pulling it through. And then your edge will be nice and square for the finish. So continue doing this till you get to the end, picking up the loop. Make sure you don't miss any of these that are hidden back here. It's easy to do. Go all the way across, and I'll show you how to tie it off. Okay, I've gone all the way across to the end. Let's see, I'll angle it. And I have this end piece that I had dropped on the left side, my last loop. What I do is I'm going to loop up through this side stitch like that. Okay, so it was hanging from when I dropped it to go left. Now I'm on my last one on the top. I'm gonna do a knit stitch to even it up here. Then I'm gonna just pull my yarn through. I'm gonna leave a little tail. Pull it through my loop. Then cinch it down tight. Like that. Then, that's a little bit long for me. I'll just weave it through. I think I'm going to go on the back side. Follow a stitch along. Like this. Then I'm going to go grab my needle and thread. I like to sew off the ends so they're nice and secure. All right, I have a needle and thread. I've looped like a continuous loop. Now I'm just going to tie the ends by wrapping it around my finger and rolling it off into a knot. Then I go to where I want to attach it, snug it up, hide it. Then I'm going to sew the end to another stitch in the blanket. Poke the needle through the cord in your yarn. You must poke it through the cord, otherwise it won't be that sturdy. And I do that a couple of times, and make sure you're going through both cords. It'll be a little bit resistant when you do it, but that means that you're through. Hold on, I made my yarn a little long today. My thread, I mean. Okay. All right. So then I'm just going to tie it off like this. I'm going to do it again. Loop it through. Tie it off. And then you can just trim it. Put that away. And then trim off the little nub at the end. Okay. So there is one end. Here is the other end. I'm going to add my tags. I ordered these off of Etsy, but you can also order them off a lot of different places. I've actually started making my own with my Cricut Maker and the engraving tool. Okay, I haven't decided if I'm going to put tassels or fringe on this. So I'm kind of thinking I'm going to do fringe. So I honestly, I normally would put them down here on two, but because I think I'm going to do fringe, I'm going to use one of these bumps right here and maybe put my tag right there, because the fringe would cover up the tag. I'll try that. I might move it, but for now I think that's my plan. So I'm going to just go through one of those crossover loops. These are Chicago screws with tags. You literally just screw them on. There's ones that you can sew. I think there are ones that are like a brad. But I think I'll put the tag right there, and then I'll do my fringe down here. This is the finished blanket. This was a new color block for me. I overestimated when I laid out my yarn how much I would need, but it ended up that I only used 2 of the pale gray, 2 of the vintage, and then 1 corn, but I just split it into half. Okay. And let me measure what I've got here. I need to finish off I'll go ahead and finish this end off and sew it. But if I fold it in half really nicely, I can just double it. So It is the finished is 38 wide, 60 long, which is pretty good length. I'm going to finish this up, try some fringe on it, and I'll post the ending picture. But I do like the colors. I'm thinking I'm not going to like this because it's kind of floppy. So
I tried some fringe on one end. I like it. I ended up putting the tag on the side. So that would be one look. I kind of like it, but I'm not sure. And here would be what I normally, if I wanted to add tassels. Here are tassels. So the tassels would be like that. Or you could do like tassels, like 4 of them spread out across each end. So you can just decide what you like, fringe or tassels. I think I'll go ahead and do the rest of the fringe. It was hard finding colors that would work. I ended up using Wool Ease, Thick and Quick, and this is wheat because it kind of had a kind of a ivory with a little specks of gray. But I also think this Woolies may have looked good too, and it's called Fossil, and it has some of those colors in too. All right. And I will make a video and post how to do the fringe. I already have another video about tassels on my channel. Yes, my channel. Thank you.